The royal palace of the Stellar Dominion shook with another explosion. Princess Elena stood at her chamber window, watching as the shield generators failed one by one. The purple-tinted force field that had protected the palace for centuries flickered and died, leaving them exposed to the rebel ships above. "Your Highness, we must leave now." Captain Reed, her most trusted guard, burst through the door. His silver armor was scarred with blast marks, and blood trickled from a cut above his eye. "The inner defenses are breached. Your uncle's forces are inside the palace." Elena grabbed her emergency pack. She'd been prepared for this day ever since she'd noticed the growing discontent among the military leaders. Her uncle, Admiral Rex, had never approved of her progressive views about opening trade with other species, especially humans. The Dominion had always stood alone, powerful and isolated, but Elena knew they needed to change. "The escape tunnel, Captain?" she asked, already moving toward the hidden panel in her wall. Reed shook his head. "Compromised. They knew all our protocols." He paused, his face grim. "We have a traitor in the Royal Guard." Another explosion rocked the palace, closer this time. Elena could hear weapons fire in the corridors. The distinctive whine of plasma rifles mixed with the shouts of fighting men. Her people were dying while she stood here. The landing pad, Reed decided. "We have one ship ready, if we can reach it." They ran through the ornate corridors of the palace. Elena's heart ached as she passed the great tapestries and artworks of her ancestors, knowing she might never see them again. The guard captain led her through service passages and hidden doors, avoiding the main battles. They were almost at the landing pad when they ran into trouble. 3 royal guards blocked their path, their armor marking them as members of her uncle's personal unit. "Stand down," Reed ordered, but the guards raised their weapons. Elena didn't hesitate. She trained in combat since childhood. It was a royal requirement. Her neural whip snapped out, wrapping around the first guard's weapon and yanking it away. Reed moved with practiced efficiency, his stun baton taking down the second guard. The third got off a shot that scorched the wall beside Elena's head before Reed knocked him unconscious. "They're wearing royal armor," Elena said softly, looking at the fallen guards. "My own people." "No time, Your Highness. The ship is waiting." They emerged onto the landing pad. The night sky was filled with battle cruisers, their weapons lighting up the darkness. A small scout ship waited, its engines already humming. Elena recognized it as one of the newest models, capable of both atmospheric and deep space flight. More explosions rocked the palace. Elena turned for one last look at her home. The grand towers were burning, centuries of history going up in flames. She could see figures moving through the smoke, more of her uncle's troops converging on their position. "Go," Reed shouted, pushing her toward the ship. "I'll hold them off." "Captain, no." But Elena knew that look in his eyes. He'd made his decision. "The Dominion needs its rightful ruler," Reed said, his voice firm. "Find help. Return stronger. I believe in you, Your Highness." Elena ran for the ship, tears blurring her vision. Behind her, she heard Reed's weapon firing, keeping the enemy back. The ship's hatch closed behind her as she reached the cockpit. Her hands flew over the controls. Thankfully, she'd insisted on learning to pilot herself, against tradition. The engines roared to life. Through the viewport, she saw Reed fall, overwhelmed by numbers. Her uncle's troops turned their weapons on her ship, but too late. She was already airborne, climbing fast through the atmosphere. Warning signals blared as enemy ships moved to intercept. Elena pushed the engines to maximum, plotting a course away from the capital. She had no destination in mind yet. She just needed to escape, to survive, to find help somewhere in the vast universe. As her homeworld shrank behind her, Elena activated the ship's distress beacon. It would broadcast on all frequencies, including those used by the newly discovered human worlds. Her uncle had always sneered at humans, calling them primitive and weak. But right now, Elena would take help from anyone who offered it. She just hoped someone would answer her call before her uncle's ships caught up with her. Lieutenant James Miller stood at attention on the bridge of the UES Huntsman, trying not to show his boredom. 3 months of deep space patrol had yielded nothing but empty sensor readings and space debris. The human vessel was one of the newest in Earth's fleet, but it was still primitive compared to the ships of older spacefaring races. "Sir," picking up a distress signal, the communications officer announced. "It's not on any standard frequency we know." Captain Roberts frowned. "Origin?" "Multiple frequencies, sir, including some that match our own protocols. But the signature is alien." Miller's training kicked in. As the ship's head of security and special operations, anything unusual fell under his jurisdiction. He moved to study the signal pattern. "Lots of power behind this," he noted. "High-end tech, but they're running scared. Look at the erratic course corrections." The main screen showed a small ship being pursued by 3 larger vessels. Their design was unlike anything in Earth's database, all smooth curves and purple-tinted metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "We're under orders not to interfere with alien conflicts," Captain Roberts reminded everyone. But Miller could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "Sir," Miller spoke up, "that small ship is badly damaged. Life support failing. 1 life sign aboard." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Whoever's in there has maybe 20 minutes of air left." The captain studied the tactical display. "The pursuing ships are way beyond our technology level. If we intervene, then we show the galaxy that humans protect the helpless," Miller finished. "Sir, Earth needs allies out here. And someone powerful enough to own ships like that could be valuable." Roberts nodded slowly. "What's your plan, Lieutenant?" Miller was already moving. "Their tech's advanced, but they're flying predictable patterns. Standard military pursuit formation. They're not expecting anyone to be crazy enough to attack them. And we're going to be that crazy." "No, sir," Miller grinned. "I am." Permission to take out the Phantom. The Phantom was Miller's pride and joy. A small stealth ship equipped with experimental technology. It wasn't pretty or powerful, but it was fast and nearly invisible to most sensors. Granted, but no direct engagement. Get the survivor out and run. Miller was in the Phantom's cockpit 2 minutes later, launching from the Huntsman's bay. The ship's stealth systems engaged, masking his approach to the alien vessels. His combat implants connected with the ship's systems, giving him enhanced reaction time. The alien ships were completely focused on their target. Miller slipped between them, approaching the damaged vessel from below. The Phantom's grapples locked on, and he activated the emergency rescue tube. "This is Lieutenant Miller of the UES Huntsman," he broadcast on all frequencies. "I'm here to help. Please prepare for emergency transfer." For a moment, nothing happened. Then a figure in ornate clothing appeared in the tube, moving gracefully despite the zero gravity. Miller's eyes widened as he recognized the royal symbols from the ship's design. This wasn't just any survivor. This was someone important. The alien looked almost human, except for the slight purple tint to their skin and the luminescent patterns that seemed to shift beneath it. Their eyes met his, and Miller saw both fear and determination there. "American?" the alien asked in perfect English, floating into the Phantom's cabin. "How did you?" "We've been studying your transmissions. I am Princess Elena of the Stellar Dominion, and those ships belong to traitors who just took my throne." The pursuing vessels had noticed something was wrong. They were turning, weapons charging. "Explanations later," Miller said, firing up the engines. "Hold on tight, Your Highness. This might get rough." The Phantom shot forward just as energy beams sliced through their previous position. Miller's hands flew over the controls, executing maneuvers that would have torn apart a larger ship. Behind them, the alien vessels tried to follow, but their size worked against them. "You're insane," Elena gasped as they spun through another impossible turn. Miller allowed himself a small smile. "Welcome to how humans fight, Princess. We're about to show your friends why they shouldn't underestimate us." The Phantom shuddered as another energy blast passed too close. Miller's hands danced across the controls, pushing the small ship to its limits. Behind them, the three massive warships of the Stellar Dominion continued their pursuit, their weapons turning space itself into a deadly light show. "Your uncle's crews are persistent," Miller said, barrel rolling the Phantom to avoid another blast. "Any chance they'll give up?" Princess Elena gripped her seat tighter. "Admiral Rex has never failed to catch his prey. And now that you've helped me." She paused, looking at him with concern. "Your ship and crew will be marked as enemies of the Dominion. Too late to worry about that now." Miller activated the ship's comm. "Huntsman, this is Phantom. We're coming in hot. Really hot." The UES Huntsman appeared ahead of them, its defensive systems already online. Captain Roberts' voice crackled through the speakers. "Copy that, Lieutenant. Better make it quick. Those ships are putting out enough energy to power a small planet." Miller lined up with the Huntsman's landing bay. Just as they were about to dock, Elena shouted, "Look out!" A new ship had appeared, dropping out of faster-than-light travel directly above them. It was bigger than the others, its hull decorated with the royal insignia of the Dominion's military command. "That's my uncle's flagship," Elena whispered. "The Starbreaker." The massive ship fired a strange weapon, not an energy beam, but a rippling wave that distorted space itself. The Huntsman's shields flickered and died. "All hands, battle stations." Captain Roberts' order rang through the ship. "Miller, get that ship docked now." Miller pushed the Phantom's engines beyond safety limits. They hit the landing bay hard, skidding across the deck until emergency barriers stopped them. He helped Elena out just as the Huntsman took another hit. "Engineering reports shield generators are fried," a crew member reported as Miller and Elena reached the bridge. "We can't take another hit like that." Miller studied the tactical display. The Starbreaker was herding them toward the other ships, trying to box them in. Standard military tactics. But that gave him an idea. "Captain," he said, "what if we do something they'd never expect? Something completely against proper military doctrine." Roberts looked at him. "I'm listening." "That uncharted wormhole we detected yesterday. The one our sensors said was highly unstable. You want us to fly into an unstable wormhole?" Elena asked, shocked. "That's suicide." "Exactly why they won't follow us," Miller explained. "Your people's ships are too valuable to risk on such a crazy maneuver. But the Huntsman is smaller, more maneuverable." Another hit rocked the ship. "Structural damage on decks 3 through 5, someone reported. "Wormhole it is," Roberts decided. "Helm, set course. Engineering, give us everything you've got." The Huntsman turned sharply, accelerating toward a swirling anomaly in space. The Dominion ships followed, but Miller could see their hesitation in the way they moved. "They're powering up their main weapons," Elena warned, reading the alien displays. "They'll try to stop us before we reach it." "Hold on to something," Miller advised as the ship's engines screamed in protest. The wormhole filled their view screen now, its swirling energies threatening to tear them apart. Behind them, the Starbreaker fired its space-distorting weapon one last time. "Brace for impact," Roberts shouted. The blast caught them just as they entered the wormhole. Instead of destroying them, it somehow interacted with the anomaly's energy. The ship spun wildly, reality itself seeming to twist around them. Warning alarms blared from every station. Miller found himself thrown against a bulkhead. Through blurring vision, he saw Elena floating weightlessly, her natural bioluminescence glowing brighter in response to the wormhole's energy. She looked both terrified and amazingly alive. Then everything went black. When Miller opened his eyes again, the ship had stopped spinning. The view screen showed unfamiliar stars. "Where are we?" Elena asked quietly. Captain Roberts checked the navigation systems. "According to this, we're not anywhere in our mapped space, but we're alive. And more importantly," Miller added, "we're away from your uncle's fleet." Elena nodded slowly. So now we just have to figure out where we are, repair the ship, and find a way to take back my throne. She smiled slightly. Simple, right? Miller returned her smile. Just another day for a human soldier, Your Highness. The UES Huntsman drifted in the unknown region of space, its crew working around the clock on repairs. In the ship's training room, Miller watched as Princess Elena attempted to disassemble and reassemble an Earth-made rifle. Her fingers moved with increasing confidence over the weapon's parts. Better, he said as she completed the task. Now you're thinking like a human soldier. Sometimes the simplest weapons are the most effective. My uncle would never expect me to use such primitive technology, Elena replied, but there was respect in her voice. He thinks humans are too far behind us to be a threat. That's exactly why we'll win. Miller helped her up from the training mat. Your people rely too much on their advanced tech. We've learned to work with what we have. The ship's intercom buzzed. Lieutenant Miller and Princess Elena to the bridge, Captain Roberts called. We've made contact. They hurried to the bridge, where the main screen showed a familiar face, one of Elena's loyal commanders who had escaped the coup. Commander White. Elena breathed. You're alive. The alien commander's skin patterns glowed with relief. My princess, when we lost contact, we feared the worst. Many of us remain loyal to you. We're organizing in secret, but... He glanced around nervously. Your uncle's forces are everywhere. He's convinced the council that you're working with humans to overthrow the Dominion itself. Miller stepped forward. He's not entirely wrong. We are going to help the princess take back her throne. A human military advisor. White looked surprised, then thoughtful. Perhaps that's exactly what we need. Admiral Rex understands Dominion tactics because he helped write them. But human warfare, that's unknown to him. Elena's face lit up. Commander, can you gather our loyal forces? We'll need ships, weapons. Better to keep our force small, Miller interrupted. A large fleet would be detected. We need to think guerrilla warfare, hit and run tactics. Guerrilla warfare, both aliens asked. Miller spent the next hour explaining Earth's history of asymmetric warfare, of how smaller forces had defeated larger ones through clever tactics and unconventional thinking. Elena and White listened intently, their expressions changing from skepticism to understanding. It goes against everything we're taught, White said finally. But that's why it might work. I can gather perhaps 5 ships, crews I trust completely. Perfect, Miller said. Small enough to slip through their patrols, large enough to strike hard and fade away. Princess, what's the weakest point in your uncle's defense network? Elena pulled up a holographic map of Dominion space. The quantum communication relays. Without them, ships can't coordinate over long distances, but they're heavily guarded. Heavily guarded against conventional attacks, Miller corrected. Not against what we're going to do. Captain Roberts, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. The Huntsman's repairs will take another week. That gives us time to train your loyal forces in Earth tactics. Elena nodded, then turned to White. Commander, send us the coordinates for a meeting point, and spread the word quietly. The true heir to the Dominion is coming back, with new allies. After White's image faded, Elena faced Miller. You should know, if we succeed, this will change everything. The Dominion has always believed in its superiority, working with humans as equals. It will transform our society. Maybe that's what your people need, Miller suggested. Change isn't always bad. Will you teach me more? Elena asked. Not just about weapons, but about how humans think, how you survive against stronger opponents. Miller saw something in her eyes then. Not just determination to reclaim her throne, but genuine curiosity about his people. And in return, you can teach me about your technology. We'll need to combine both to win this fight. An alliance, Elena said softly, extending her hand in the human gesture she'd learned. Miller took it, noting how her skin's natural glow brightened at the contact. An alliance, he agreed. Now let's go make your uncle regret underestimating both of us." Behind them, the stars of unknown space glittered, silently witnessing the beginning of a partnership that would change two civilizations forever. Commander White's 5 ships rendezvoused with the Huntsman in the shadow of a dead moon. Miller watched from the bridge as Alina greeted her loyal captains, each one kneeling before her despite her protests. "Old habits die hard," she explained to Miller later as they planned in the war room. "But we need warriors now, not courtiers." The combined human-alien force gathered around a holographic display of the capital planet. Miller had spent weeks training the Dominion crews in human combat tactics, while Alina had helped upgrade the Huntsman with select pieces of alien technology. "The capital's outer defenses are strongest here and here," Alina pointed. "My uncle expects a traditional assault from these vectors." "Then we don't give him one," Miller said. "Commander White, how are your crews doing with the new maneuvers?" The alien commander's skin patterns pulsed with pride. "They've mastered your submarine warfare concepts. Silent running, passive sensors only. We can move through space like ghosts now." "Good." Miller highlighted a section of the display. "Because we're going to slip right through their sensor net. Not where it's strongest, but here, where they think it's strongest." Alina leaned forward. "The radiation belt. But the interference would blind our sensors too." "Exactly why they won't expect it. We'll navigate by dead reckoning, like old Earth sailing ships. And when we emerge," he smiled grimly, "we'll be right on top of their command center." Captain Roberts studied the plan. "It's insane. A dozen things could go wrong, which means it's exactly the kind of human thinking they won't be prepared for." Alina's loyal captains exchanged looks. They'd learned to trust these strange human tactics, but this was their boldest move yet. "What about the quantum relays?" one captain asked. Miller pointed to various spots on the map. "Small teams, single ships. Hit and run. Make them think we're launching a standard raid on their communications, while they're distracted. We strike at the heart," Alina finished. Her expression was fierce. "My uncle will be in the command center. He never leaves it now, too paranoid of assassination." "Your Highness," Miller said carefully, "when we get there." "I know. No mercy." Her voice was firm. "He killed loyal subjects, betrayed his oath to the throne. There can be only one response." The next hours were a blur of preparation. Miller worked with Alina to modify her royal armor with human combat systems. Simple things: backup radio when quantum comms failed, mechanical backup sights for her weapons, even a basic compass. "Sometimes the old ways are best," he told her as she practiced with the hybrid gear. Alina paused in her training. "Miller, James, if this works, it changes everything. Not just the throne, but how my people think about humans, about what we can learn from each other. Worried about that?" "No." She smiled, her skin patterns forming complex swirls that he'd learned meant deep emotion. "Excited. We've been stagnant, thinking we had nothing left to learn. You've shown us differently." An alarm chimed softly. Time to move. The small fleet split up, each ship knowing its role. The Huntsman and 2 Dominion vessels slipped into the radiation belt, their crews fighting nausea as the interference played havoc with artificial gravity. Miller stood at his station, feeling the ship shudder as radiation battered their shields. Alina was beside him, wearing her modified armor, looking every inch the warrior princess. "Dead reckoning in 3, Roberts announced. 2, 1. All systems dark." The ships went silent, running on momentum and calculated trajectories. Miller felt sweat trickle down his back. One miscalculation, 1 degree off in their course. Minutes stretched like hours. Then the radiation cleared, and there it was. The massive command center, its defenses pointed the wrong way. "All ships, weapons hot," Alina commanded, her voice regal and terrible. "Show my uncle how humans fight." The element of surprise was total. As their small force opened fire, Miller saw Alina's expression. part satisfaction, part sadness for what was to come. The battle for the throne was about to begin, and it would be like nothing the Dominion had ever seen before. The command center's outer defenses crumbled under the unexpected assault. Miller and Alina led the boarding team through the breach, their mixed force of human and Dominion troops moving with practiced coordination. Alarms blared throughout the massive structure. Security forces responding from multiple directions, White reported through the comm. But they're following standard protocols, exactly as we planned. Miller nodded. They'd spent weeks studying Dominion military responses, finding the patterns. Now those predictable tactics would work against them. Team 2, spring the trap, he ordered. Along the main corridors, the defenders rushed forward in textbook formation, only to find themselves caught in crossfire from hidden positions. Alina's troops, using modified human combat techniques, struck from unexpected angles. The defenders' advanced shields were calibrated for energy weapons, not the simple kinetic rounds the humans had provided. The throne room is 3 levels up, Alina said, checking a holographic display on her armor. My uncle will be there, coordinating the defense. A massive explosion rocked the building. Through the armored windows, they could see the space battle raging outside. The Huntsman and its alien allies were running circles around the larger Dominion ships, using maneuvers that violated every rule of space combat. Your Highness, a guard captain rounded the corner, then dropped to one knee. The quantum relay network is down. Admiral Rex is cut off from the fleet. Good work, Alina said. Hold this position. We're going up. Miller led the way to a maintenance shaft, another human tactic, using service routes instead of main corridors. As they climbed, Alina spoke softly. I never understood why my father insisted I learn every part of the palace, even the servant passages. Now I know. He was preparing me for this. They emerged into chaos. The throne room level was filled with smoke and weapons fire. Admiral Rex's personal guard fought desperately, but they were caught between Alina's forces advancing from multiple directions. The throne room doors are sealed, White reported, joining them with his team. Heavy shielding. Miller checked his modified scanner, but not against sound waves. He pulled out a device that looked primitive compared to Dominion technology. Old earth mining technique. Stand back. The sonic disruptor hummed. Cracks appeared in the massive doors, spreading like spider webs. With a thunderous crash, they collapsed inward. Admiral Rex stood before the throne, surrounded by elite guards. His skin patterns burned with rage as he saw Alina. So, he snarled, the princess returns with her pet humans. You dishonor our entire civilization by working with these primitives. No, Uncle. Alina's voice rang with authority. I'm saving our civilization from becoming a fossil. We stopped growing, stopped learning. These primitives just outfought your best forces. Kill them all, Rex ordered. The fight was brutal but brief. Alina's forces, combining Dominion power with human tactics, overwhelmed the guards. Miller moved like a shadow at Alina's side, his earth weapons catching the defenders by surprise. Rex drew his ceremonial weapon, its energy blade humming. I should have killed you myself. You forgot the first lesson of ruling, Alina said, activating her own blade. A true leader adapts. Their duel was swift and terrible. Rex had more experience, but Alina had learned new ways of fighting. She moved unpredictably, mixing Dominion blade techniques with human hand-to-hand combat. When the end came, it was almost anticlimactic. Alina slipped past her uncle's guard and struck, not with her energy blade, but with a simple kinetic pistol Miller had given her. Rex fell, his expression one of utter disbelief. Impossible, he gasped. Beaten by primitive weapons. No, Alina corrected him. Beaten by change. The fighting outside was ending. The huntsman's tactics had thrown the Dominion fleet into disarray, and news of Rex's defeat was spreading. Miller watched as Alina walked to the throne. She turned to face the gathered forces, human and Dominion together. The old ways are done, she declared. We will learn from others, grow stronger through alliance rather than isolation. Starting today, the Dominion changes. Her gaze met Miller's, and her skin patterns formed the complex swirls he now recognized as hope. A new era was beginning, forged in the heat of battle by the most unlikely of alliances. 1 month after the battle, the capital gleamed under its twin suns. The damage from the fighting had been repaired, but the changes went far deeper than mere construction. Human ships now docked openly at Dominion ports, and mixed crews walked the streets. Miller stood in his new quarters in the palace, adjusting his formal uniform. As chief military advisor to the crown, he had quarters in the royal wing, a position that had caused quite a stir among traditionalists. Still not used to all this, he muttered, looking at the luxurious room with its blend of human and Dominion aesthetics. A soft chime announced Alina's arrival. She entered wearing her full royal regalia, but her crown was different, redesigned to incorporate elements of Earth military medals, a symbol of the new alliance. "Ready for the ceremony?" she asked, her skin patterns showing amusement at his discomfort with formal wear. "Give me a battlefield any day," he replied, but smiled. The Dominion Council is really going through with these changes. They don't have much choice. Our victory proved the old ways needed updating. She touched a control, bringing up a holographic display of recent military exercises. "Look how well the combined forces are performing." The display showed Dominion ships executing complex human-style maneuvers, while Earth vessels used modified alien technology. It was a powerful combination. "The trade agreements are just the beginning," Alina continued. "Cultural exchange programs, technological sharing, within reason, of course, even a joint military academy." "Your uncle would be spinning in his grave," Miller said, "if he had one." Alina's expression darkened briefly. Following Dominion tradition, traitors were not given formal burials. Rex's body had been sent into the nearest sun. "The people are adapting better than expected," she said, changing the subject. "They see the benefits of cooperation, though some of the noble houses are still resistant." "That's why you need better security," Miller insisted. "The old protocols aren't enough. Hence your new position." She stepped closer. "I trust you, James. More than anyone, you proved the humans aren't just worthy allies. You're equals. Different, but equal." Miller felt the familiar tension between them. They'd grown close during the fighting, closer still during the reconstruction. But she was a queen now, and he. "The ceremony starts soon," he said. "We should go." The Great Hall was packed with representatives from both civilizations. Captain Roberts and the Huntsman's crew had places of honor, as did Commander White and the loyal forces who'd fought with them. Alina took her throne as Miller stood at his designated position nearby. The formal alliance signing began, with leaders from Earth and the Dominion taking turns to approve the historic documents. "Let it be known," Alina proclaimed, her voice carrying to every corner, "that from this day forward, the stellar Dominion and Earth stand together. Not as superior and inferior, but as partners. Let our strengths complement each other, our weaknesses be covered by unity." Miller watched her as she spoke. She'd grown into her role as queen, but hadn't lost the fire that had driven her to fight for her throne. If anything, it burned brighter now. After the ceremony, during the celebrations, Alina found a moment to speak privately with him. "There's one more change I'm considering," she said, "an old law about royal marriages and foreign alliances." Miller's heart skipped a beat. "Your Highness." "Alina," she corrected. "After everything, I think you've earned the right to use my name." Her skin patterns formed the complex swirls he now knew meant deep affection. The Dominion needs this alliance to work. Having a human as chief military advisor is a good start, but having one as prince consort, that would cause quite a scandal, he said carefully. "Good," she smiled. "We need to shake things up a bit more." Besides, her pattern shifted to show amusement. "Can you imagine better protection than having my bodyguard as my husband?" Miller looked at her, this remarkable woman who had changed an empire. "I serve at my queen's pleasure," he said formally, then grinned. "But Alina?" "The answer is yes." Above them, human and Dominion ships patrolled together, their crews learning from each other, growing stronger through unity. A new chapter was beginning, not just for Alina and Miller, but for both their peoples. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony. In seeking to protect his civilization's isolation, Admiral Rex had instead sparked the greatest change in its history, and all because one human soldier had decided to save an alien princess.